I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, two events over the weekend of real significance. On Sunday, an estimated 25,000 people, Americans, Jews and non-Jews, marched across the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City under the theme of no hate, no fear, in response to this spate of anti-Semitic incidents of violence perpetrated against Jews, crescendoing in a Hanukkah evening attack at a rabbi's home in Monsey, New York, Rabbi Chaim Rottenberg, where a man slashed 5 Jews with a machete-like knife, critically injuring 2, one of whom, 72-year-old Joseph Newman, remains in dire condition as we tape this edition of In the News, and who is not expected to survive, and if he does survive, is likely to have permanent brain damage. And our hearts go out to the families of all the injured, and especially to the family of Joseph Newman. And the second event of significance on Friday of last week, a U.S. drone killed the leading terrorist murderer in the world today, Qasem Soliemani, who is responsible for hundreds of American deaths and Israeli deaths as a leader of Iran's Quds Force, the elite unit in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard that's been internationally designated a terrorist organization. Qasem Soliemani was the number 2 man in the Iranian regime after the Ayatollah Khomeini, and reportedly had been actively planning a series of terrorist attacks against Americans and other Westerners, even on U.S. soil. Soleimani, who has armed both Hezbollah in Lebanon with thousands of rockets aimed at Israel, and Hamas in Gaza, had once been in Israeli crosshairs, but Israel was prevented from killing him by the Obama administration. Soleimani was killed in his car at the Baghdad airport in Iraq. And in this crazy world we now live in, there are those in America who are criticizing the president's decision to authorize the drone strike. Well, to shed some light on both of these issues, the no hate, no fear march across the Brooklyn Bridge, and the killing of Qasem Soliemani and the ensuing controversy, I'm so pleased to be joined by 2 individuals you hopefully will see and hear a great deal from in this new calendar year. I'm so pleased to have sitting to my right, Thane Rosenbaum, the distinguished university professor at Touro College, and now JBS's senior analyst. And Thane is someone you've seen often and he's loved very much here at JBS. And to Thane's right, I'm thrilled to introduce to all of you again a man you've seen so often on JBS, who is now formally part of the JBS family, the former media consul for the Israeli consulate in New York, and the former director of the Northeast region of Stand With Us, Shahar Azani. Gentlemen, I welcome both of you. This is going to be a wonderful year. Thane, Shahar, thank you so much for joining me.
We're happy to be here
Pleasure.
together.
Yep.
Wonderful. So we start with no hate, no fear. Thane, you were actually at the march. You literally walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. You were there in the cold. What was your sense of it? What was your reaction to it?
Well, Mark, it was remarkable in many ways because we keep forgetting that this was being done largely on behalf of the Hasidic Jews of the United States. This march was not organized because of the murders in the Pittsburgh Tree of Life Synagogue or the Poway one in San Diego. It reached a point, a crescendo, as you pointed out, with the killings in the Hanukkah night killings in Monsey, upstate New York. And this was largely a statement by mostly secular Jews standing up for their Hasidic brothers and sisters. What was interesting is that there were very few Hasidim marching across the bridge.
Did that trouble you?
No, I guess I wasn't all that surprised in a way. What troubled me more is yes, there were surely non-Jews, but the vast majority of people there were Jewish. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see any really, there were very sparse representation of African Americans.
And by the way, again, we discussed this at length, but the sort of sensitive issue right now is that the series of anti-Semitic attacks, which generated this march, it was, ultimately the act in Muncie, but it was a series of
2 years.
violence after violence event, and it was perpetrated by the African American community.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is that you were disappointed that there were not more African Americans in the group that you saw marching across the bridge.
The violence that we've seen, certainly in 2019, was perpetrated in largely African American communities that were shared neighborhoods with Hasidim. So it was their territory, it's their turf. And so that's why I had hoped that there would be more of a Brooklyn presence. Ironically, neither the Hasidim nor did it seem to me that the African American community of those neighborhoods were there.
Yeah. By the way, this is not what Hasidim typically do. They don't typically join marches.
Which is why I wasn't altogether
Yes.
surprised. I'm not.
In other words, I'm not upset that they weren't there. Were you upset at all?
No, in fact, that's what I think is what's lovely about the gesture itself, which is that too often American secular Jews dismiss the Hasidim as those who refuse to assimilate within the larger framework of the American mainstream. There's no immersion, no melting pot. So there's always this sense of, the other Jews, the religious Jews, not even the black hat Jews, but the Hasidic Jews. They're of another world, right? This is what we always say. They're living in the 19th century, and they're of another world. But that's not what happened here. It's, in fact, you're quite right, Mark. It was the most recent actions over the last several years that took place primarily in Hasidic communities, including Jersey City in New Jersey, that inspired this action, this collective call, a summoning, almost a call to arms.
One more question for you. Was it moving at all?
It was. I think it was. I mean, look, some of it, the speeches at the rally, I found to be, I was very uninspired by them. I felt that a number of things. First of all, they focused more on funds that are being allocated to protect religious houses of worship. And every time you say that, yes, I understand there was also a shooting recently in a church in Texas. But I'm always troubled when we blur anti-Semitic acts and call them just acts of discrimination and bigotry. Anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism. There's no reason why we can't identify for what it is instead of we're constantly doing. We saw the United States House of Representatives when there was an anti-Semitism resolution. Somehow it got changed to a general anti-discrimination one. Attacks against Jews have a long history. It's the oldest, most popular prejudice. It's always been with us. There's no reason not to identify it for what it is. So in a way, what I liked about this, what was moving about it, it was that the very people who we don't consider to be part of the mainstream American Jewish movement were the people that this was done on their behalf. Yes. They weren't there so much, and that's probably not that unexpected given what you just said.
Exactly. Shahar, as you watched it, what was your sense about the march and the way in which there has been in many communities over the weekend, especially on Sunday, in many communities. In my home community in Stamford, there was a large gathering at one of the synagogues. Jews from all over the city came. Virtually every governmental official, local and state, were there, including the governor, including senators from the United States Senate. You're looking at this. What's your sense?
So I'll mention three quick things. First of all, relating to the last statement by Thane. Not only is there no reason to distinguish anti-Semitism, there is every reason in the book to distinguish anti-Semitism and not to blur the issue. Not only is anti-Semitism as ancient and as horrendous as we know, its affliction has been felt and downgraded humanity to its lowest point only a few decades ago. And for us to look away from that horrible malaise is a huge mistake. On a different level, I want to take it beyond the Hasidic Jewry for a minute. I'm looking at the rally first of all, as an opportunity for a rare moment of unity within the Jewish community, where you saw Jews coming not only from New York, but from the region, people from Cleveland and Philadelphia, from Boston, to come together to stand up for what? In New York, and I understand, Mark, that it happened in Stamford, Connecticut, and elsewhere, but New York is perceived to be the capital city
Absolutely.
of diaspora Jewry. And it is a projection of Jewish power, not only vis-a-vis New York and the US, but when I'm thinking about our brothers and sisters in Rome, and in Berlin, and in France, and thinking that at exactly the same time in Jerusalem, we had a similar No Hate, No Fear rally opposite the Jewish Agency building to send a clear message of unity. But the bottom line is this, and that is repeating things that were said before in the panel. No more platitudes, no more empty promises on the stage, no more generalizations. We need to see concrete measures taken. It's not about coming together and praying and hoping. It's about what we're going to do to defend the Jewish community. And Hasidic are only targeted because they're visibly Jewish, but we are all Jews.
Of course.
And we are all on the same list. And at the same level, what is the punishment measures that are going to be taken against those who perpetrate the attacks? We want to know what happened, and I think the public deserves to know what measures are taken against those perpetrators and what the judgment is, so that the element of deterrence exists.
Okay, I think you say it so well, and now I'm going to say this. I'm watching. I watched one rally from beginning to end. Unfortunately, I had a medical issue, so I couldn't attend, so I was watching the entire event online. And I'm saying to myself two things. I want your reactions. Number one, I'm very upset it was about no hate. Because no hate seems to me, we adopted the exact same model, which was an error, that the House of Representatives adopted. This was not about hate. This was about anti-Semitism. And I don't know who chose the title, No Hate, No Fear. First of all, it's a lie to say there's no fear. The reason why we had these is that Jews are frightened all over the place. So I didn't like no fear, but I was very upset that it wasn't no anti-Semitism. This wasn't about hate. People didn't walk across the Brooklyn Bridge because of hate. They walked across because of anti-Semitism. And every politician, every Jewish leader, organizational, who got up had to say that, and they didn't. And I was very, very disappointed. I was disappointed in our own Connecticut rally because I felt everything about it just degraded, and it was a lie. And one other thing bothered me. The people who came, once you say, let's talk about hate, what do people say from the rostrum? They say the following: we need to love. And somebody suggested at the rally I saw, everybody should go out here and say something nice to somebody else. I'm thinking to myself, who does he think he's talking to? Does the speaker think he's talking to people who hate, and he must remind them not to hate? The victims now have to be told, don't hate. Excuse me. The people in that room were not hateful people. They were scared people. They were people who came together for a moment of solidarity, and that was the strongest point. That was the strongest experience. People walked away happy because they weren't thinking the way I'm thinking. They only thought one thing: I'm on a bridge with 25,000 Jews, wow. I'm in a synagogue with 500 Jews, wow. But the message was wrong. And the message is the message that you now, both of you, have said this. The question is, I wanted to hear, it would have been nice if my congressman had gotten up and said, you know, we made a mistake in the House. We never should have changed the anti-Semitism bill to the hate bill. I'm going to go back next week and I'm going to reintroduce an anti-Semitism bill. I wanted the police to get up and say to me, from now on, anybody hits an Orthodox Jew or a Reform Jew or a secular Jew, they're going to jail. Because right now they don't go to jail. You touch another Jew, you're in jail, baby. That's what I wanted to hear. I didn't hear it across the bridge. I didn't hear it in Stamford, Connecticut. And my feeling is, although there was something very wonderful about Jews all being together at a moment of, let's say it, crisis, it bothered me terribly that the message was diluted, misdirected, and that the people who spoke didn't understand at all what had to be said. React, please.
I was reminded as listening, by the way, you said it so wonderfully, but I was reminded about when the movements in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s to free Soviet Jewry, when Jews gathered in those situations, they were violent. You know, they made demands. They wanted Russia, the Soviet Union, to know, let my people go.
And it was about my people,
Yeah,
the Jews.
And we're not backing down, and we are going to, I mean, wasn't there, they threw acid on the stage of the Bolshoi Ballet? Yeah. I mean, this was what,
serious stuff.
This is what was required to send the message that free the Soviet Jews.
We went to Washington to get Jackson Vanik passed.
Yes. This is not what it looked like yesterday. Yesterday, it looked like, again, it looked like more like a Jewish Woodstock, you know, a kind of solidarity movement. But again, it's the very people who are on stage who weren't doing anything. The ones that were speaking were the people that were asleep at the switch anyway. All the political leaders, all the Jewish community.
Yes. And by the way, not all the Jewish. One was palpably absent.
Not invited, probably.
Mort Klein and the ZOA has been a leader in this fight.
It's true.
And Mort was not allowed to come.
Yeah.
And I am sorry for Mort, and I think it was a mistake by the organized Jewish community. Your reaction, and then I want to move on to Soleimani.
I'll just tell you that contrary to what may have been perceived at the beginning, if you look into the coverage of the rally, anti-Semitism is featured highly, which is terrific.
Absolutely.
And it's important to remember. And
yes.
then let's treat the march as the march. It was great. Now what's up?
Now
what's going to happen?
Yes.
Now we want to see it.
Excellent. And I want our audience to understand. JBS is now going to be doing a new series. And the new series is the anti-Semitism epidemic. We're going to do a series of, we're not going to let up. The three of us are not going to let up. Tisha Bader's not going to let up. We are going to stay on this, and we're going to demand, as Shahar said, action. Okay, only because of time, I want to switch gears. Shahar, I said to you right away, so what's the significance of taking out Soleimani? And then, Thane, I want you to comment on the reaction we've seen from the American left. But first, set this up. How did you feel? Were you upset that the United States took out a general? Many people have said we have no business taking out another, even the enemy's general. But I mentioned in the open, Israel also really wanted this guy out of the way. But set it up in any way you want. How did you react to Soleimani's death?
I can assure you, and I believe many others, not necessarily of Jewish or American origin, shed no tear for the killing of Qasem Soliemani, the head of the Quds Force, which is the elite force within the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, which is the elite arm of the Iranian regime in exporting the revolution, which is the main instrument used by Iran to operate its proxies across the Middle East and across the world to destabilize regime. Soleimani's actions, his proxy organizations, and people under him supplied logistical support, ammunition, and funds to the Houthis in Yemen, which cost 100,000 lives and displacing millions of others. Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is holding the Lebanese state hostage to the Shiite organization's agenda. In Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, you see a puppet operated by Soleimani and the Iranian regime, not to mention the incredible plight of the Syrian state, as Qasem Soleimani waged war that resulted in the massacre and murder of so many of innocent Syrian citizens. So the removal of Soleimani from the arena is good news. It should be stated as such.
All right, and what about the argument? Well, you've poked the eye of the tiger, and now there's going to be some Iranian response that is going to cost either American lives or Israeli lives or Westerners' lives. Was it really necessary to do this? Wouldn't it have been better, the argument goes, to leave the guy alone because all you've done is now incite more violence from Iran?
Looking at Iranian policy in the past decade, and especially in the past few years, you can see the insatiable appetite of the Iranian regime to devour all that's around them and to take over hegemoniously in this, whether it's in Syria, Lebanon, or elsewhere. The real question is this: standing up to evil will always have a cost. But what is the cost of not standing up to the murderous imperial desires of the Iranian regimes? For we have seen Soleimani teasing the American tiger, sending its forces against the American embassy, targeting American soldiers, killing American soldiers en masse through the IEDs in Iraq. This continuous action led to a situation where, like you say, Soleimani was able to get off the plane and thinking that he's completely immune, for the West is too weak to retaliate against their continuous provocations. My hope, and I believe many other decent people's hope, is that the message that was sent to the Iranian regime was clear. There will be a cost to your actions. So if you are interested not in exporting the revolution, but the survival of the regime, you will make your own considerations differently than assuming that you are immune in continuing your spread of terror and destabilization campaign in the Middle East and across the world.
Thane?
Well said, Shahar. Look, I think this must have shocked Iran in ways that, were unimaginable. They're used to 8 years of Obama. 8 years of the Obama administration was a conciliatory 8 years. It wasn't just the Iran deal. It started from the very first days of the Obama administration. Conciliatory gestures, New Year's greetings, every effort to sort of, and what people didn't understand is that the Iranians didn't see it that way. They saw weakness. And that's how they respond. By the way, Shahar is from the Middle East, so he understands this is not unique to Iran. This is true of a lot of these countries. This business of thinking that you're dealing with countries like you do on the faculty lounge in the University of Chicago, which is what President Obama did. He was very naive. He thought, you just say hello to people and you apologize in Cairo and they'll love you. That's not what they do. They see weakness. You negotiate a really bad deal in which you can't even monitor the enrichment, where you allow ballistic missiles to continue, to allow them to continue to export terrorism around the world, to foment instability all throughout the Middle East. I mean, you forget Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Gaza. Iran is behind all of those moves, and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is firing missiles into Israel that are precision-guided GPS rockets. This is not manufactured in Lebanon. They're given to Hezbollah by Iran. And it's not just Israel. The Gulf states are probably celebrating this. I mean, nobody wanted this guy alive. I think this is a problem that we have, and I wrote about this years ago, and I think it was, is that we want to dress up terrorists and treat them like statesmen. We pretend. Wouldn't it be nice? This is actually a state. He's not. This was a terrorist, and we should speak of this man as a person that the world is now better off that he's not here.
Okay, it was the right thing for the administration to do?
Absolutely. I'll tell you what I don't like what the administration is doing now is trying to say, because it may not be true, that we know for sure that he was planning another attack on the United States. There was plenty of reasons to kill this guy. You don't need, I had the same problem years ago with weapons of mass destruction. We didn't need to use the words weapons of mass destruction to take Saddam Hussein out. You know why I wanted to take him out? For all sorts of reasons. He beheaded 200 women because their husbands claimed that they were adulterers. There were plenty of reasons for these. These are mass murderers. They are exporters of terrorism and it create an incredible amount of regional instability. People are forgetting the hijacking of British tankers over the last several years, the sabotaging of oil tankers, the cutting off the Strait of Hormuz. These are all actions that Soleimani was involved in.
The missiles at Saudi Arabia and oil.
Endless, right, and unbelievable amounts of shipments that are sent of rockets and weaponry to parts of the world that are not just a danger to Israel, but have actually cost American lives.
Okay, and how do you answer the criticism being heard in America now? You have again stuck your eye in the tiger, and there's going to be repercussions, and Americans will pay. And by the way, there was, he's about as similar to vice president as you can get. It would be like we took out a vice president, and there are people who are saying, no, nations don't do that. There's sort of an agreement that the top echelon is left alone. It's left alone because the top echelon doesn't want themselves to be the targets. But two criticisms in America, speak to them quickly. One, you're now going to have a response from Iran that may cost lives. And two, I thought we weren't supposed to go after that level of enemy.
Well, let me answer two first, which is what I said before. We spend a lot of time trying to dress up terrorists, thugs, and call them statesmen. I don't care what number he was. This is not a diplomat. This is not a statesman of a regime that's interested in world peace. This is a menace on the global stage, and he was their principal architect of violence and murder all throughout the region and the world, number one. Number two, yes, what is the point of being a superpower if you don't stand up for principles? If you're constantly worried about a retaliation, what is the point of saying that there's a virtue of being an American if all you're concerned about is the retaliation? And let me just say something about the retaliation. I remember, Shahar may know this much better than I do. I heard Ehud Barak one day talking about Iran, and he was very casual about it. I was at a dinner with him, and he said, it's a 3-week operation at most. And I went, what? He said, yes, this is a 3-week. I said, what is he? Yes, taking out the Iranians. This is not what we've elevated them to something that they're not, right? They're thugs, number one. Number two, they fought a war with Saddam Hussein to a stalemate, a war that they should have won. What they do is they're promiscuous in their foreign policy, mischievous and promiscuous. They arm others, proxies. I haven't seen them do much fighting.
Okay, but bottom line, it doesn't worry you.
Of course it worries me.
There is likely to be retaliation.
Of course it worries me.
But it's worth it to you.
Of course it worries me.
Is it worth it to you?
Yes, of course. Because we are ultimately safer the more we send them the message that their actions are done without impunity.
Okay, we only have about a minute left. I fear that this is about Trump. That the criticism of this act has more to do with the fact that Trump did it. Had Obama done it, or if Trump were not hated the way he is, I don't think that we would have seen this kind of criticism. And it seems to me that it's time to let Trump go, meaning Trump can't be the answer every time you're upset with something. Anyway, we only have about a minute left. So
a minute.
1 minute.
I think it's worthy to mention it today. I do shed a tear. I shed a tear for the 1,500 innocent demonstrators who rose against the tyrannical regime in Iran and were murdered and tortured by the Iranian regime. These are the people we should mention today. These are the voices we should utter, for they have perished because of Soleimani and his ilk.
And the Green Revolution that we refused to support under the Obama administration, we could have helped destabilize and completely upend the Islamic Revolution, but we were afraid.
Gentlemen, it is so wonderful to have you at this table. We're going to do this very often. I think it is wonderful to have your insight, and you say things the way it needs to be said. I'm very proud to have both of you at this table.
We're proud to be here.
Thank you.
The thoughts of Thane, Rosenbaum, and Shahar Azani. I hope they've provided you with some insight into both the fight against anti-Semitism and its epidemic, and the killing of Iran's top terrorist organizer, Qasem Soliemani. As always, my thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, JBS's Associate Director, Dara Golub, Technical Manager, Michael Paley, Transmission Manager, John McDevitt, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. We'll be at this table often. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.